Good midnight, night owls. You're tuned to Midnight FM, and I'm your host, RJ Jacob. Sometimes the strangest stories don't begin with a scream. They start with something small, almost polite. A single tick. A week ago, an email arrived with no name, no greeting, just one line. If you want to hear time itself breathing, come to Oldbridge Manor. Now, you all know me. Curiosity is my bad habit. So I packed my recorder, caught the last evening train, and rode through a valley that smelled of rain and iron, until the world narrowed into mist. When the lights of Oldbridge appeared, they didn't look modern. They looked remembered. The manor stood behind a gate eaten by rust and ivy. Before I even saw the house, I heard it. The sound of clocks. Hundreds of them, each disagreeing with the other. The air itself vibrated with tick and tock, 1,000 mismatched hearts trying to share one body. Inside, dust hung like fog. Every wall was crowded, mantel clocks, pocket watches, a tower clock missing its face. None had stopped, none agreed. I spoke softly into my recorder. Oldbridge Manor, unoccupied 92 years, all mechanisms active. My voice vanished under the rhythm. Then, from upstairs, a new sound, a click, and a slow, deliberate creak. A door opening on its own, or something wanting me to think so. I climbed. At the landing, a long hallway waited. The wallpaper bubbled with damp. Portraits turned toward each other as if whispering. At the far end, a door stood ajar. A draft brushed my sleeve. Inside was a study washed gray by window light. On the desk lay a brass key tied with a ribbon, green, fresh, absurdly alive in that dead room. Against the wall, a tall case clock leaned slightly, its pendulum frozen in mid-arc. I picked up the key. It felt warm. A thought passed through me, quiet but certain. If you wind it, it will wind you back. I turned the key anyway. The pendulum twitched, inhaled, and began its slow, graceful swing. The rest of the house woke up. Every clock joined the rhythm, some eager, some reluctant, until the air thickened with pulse. I backed toward the door. That's when a voice brushed my ear, soft enough to doubt. "You're late." I turned. No one. Only the portrait above the desk, a man in a waistcoat, 3 keys on his chain, eyes like polished coins. The nameplate read, Elias Ward, clockmaker. I should have left then, but stories don't come to those who leave early. On the desk, beside the key, lay a ledger. Each page listed names with times beside them. Every entry ended the same, 12 o'clock. The final line had been rubbed almost blank. I brushed it gently. A single initial survived, J. I didn't like how that looked. Behind me, the clocks argued louder, overlapping until rhythm became storm. I shouted, "Enough!" and they obeyed. Silence filled the house like water fills a glass. Even my heartbeat sounded intrusive. Then the portrait's frame creaked. The painted man seemed to exhale. The faintest smile formed, the kind only paint should never manage. Downstairs, a new ticking began, slower, heavier. I followed it into the hall and found a small clock I hadn't seen before. Round-faced, brass rim, hands twitching backward. Each reverse tick felt like a small theft from my chest. I whispered, "Stop," and it did. I packed my recorder, told myself I'd return in daylight, and walked out into the mist. But the gate that had groaned open earlier swung shut before I reached it. Behind me, through the attic window, a faint yellow glow pulsed, steady as breathing. I left anyway. Oldbridge had one inn, the kind where the kettle whistles longer than guests stay. The keeper, Mrs. Alden, looked up from polishing glasses. "You've been up at Ward's house." Her tone made it a confession, not a question. "I have," I said. "Did you know him?" She said he was kind to children, cruel to time. "What happened to him?" She said he listened too hard. "You do that long enough, time listens back." She poured coffee that smelled older than conversation. "You'll dream fast tonight," she added. "I always do," I said. I didn't sleep. The ticking followed me, not from any clock in the room, but from under my pillow, inside my head. Each beat aligned perfectly with my pulse until I couldn't tell which was which. At 3 a.m., I checked my watch. The hands spun once and stopped at 12. The room exhaled as if it had been holding that moment for years. Morning came pale. Outside, mist peeled from the hills like skin from milk. I told myself I'd go once more, just to understand. The gate swung open before I touched it. Inside, the house greeted me with perfect rhythm. All the clocks had synchronized. On the table in the foyer lay a folded note written in careful script. "If you cannot keep time, time will keep you." My mouth went dry. The paper felt warm, like skin left too close to a fire. In the study, the ledger waited open. Where the smudged line had been, there were now words in fresh ink. Jacob, 12 o'clock. The pen beside it dripped a single drop of black that rolled toward me and vanished into the page. From somewhere deep below came a sound I hadn't heard before. The heavy grind of stone on stone, a gear too large to belong to any clock made by hands. The floor vibrated gently. Then another whisper, the same voice as before. "Tell it true." I steadied the recorder. Night owls, this might be the last broadcast I make from a house that knows what hour it wants you to die. The tall clock struck once, though its hands stood still. The vibration crawled up my legs. Dust lifted from the floor in slow motion, hung in the air, refused to fall. I turned off the recorder and followed the sound beneath the stairs. The cellar door was half hidden behind a coat rack. A strip of dust along the floor showed it had been opened recently, or often. The green-ribboned key fit the lock as if the brass had been waiting for it. When I turned it, the house inhaled. The stairs were stone. Each step groaned beneath me like an old lung. The light from my phone stuttered, blue-white on walls lined with clock faces, nailed like trophies. None had hands. Each stared blankly, pupils cut out. At the end of the corridor, a workbench waited. Upon it lay the largest clock I'd ever seen. A sheet of glass 3 feet across, gears turning behind it like muscles. The hands didn't point to numbers. They pointed to scratches, hundreds of them, each etched by something with patience but no sanity. I stepped closer. The glass fogged, then cleared. My reflection stared back, but there was someone standing behind me in the reflection, a man in a waistcoat. When I turned, the room was empty. In the reflection, he spoke first. "You wound it." "I did," I said. He smiled without lips. "Then it winds you. That's the rule." I should have been afraid. Instead, I felt a strange politeness, like being corrected by a teacher you secretly admire. I asked him, "What do you want from me?" He said, "An hour. That's all anyone ever owes." The glass pulsed. I saw scenes flicker across its surface. People at tables, eating, talking, unaware of a clock humming softly nearby. Each scene froze when a clock struck 12. Faces blurred. Then nothing. "How many?" I asked. He laughed, a dry clicking that belonged inside a mechanism. "As many as it takes to keep time perfect." I pressed my hand to the glass. It was warm, beating faintly, like skin stretched over a chest. Inside, behind the gears, a dark pendulum swung. Every time it passed center, I felt my heart skip, matching it. The air thickened. My lungs fought for room. I backed away, stumbled against the steps, and climbed fast, leaving the door wide. Upstairs, the house had changed. The ticking had slowed, stretched between beats. It felt like walking through honey. In the hall, the portrait of Elias Ward hung crooked. The smile painted there had widened, subtle but cruel. The green ribbon from my key fluttered, though no air moved. When I reached the study, the ledger waited open. The page with my name looked wetter than ink should be. I closed the book, and the sound it made was too loud, the slap of a door shutting far away. Something moved behind the tall case clock, a whisper. "Midnight for you, noon for the house." I grabbed the recorder and spoke fast. "If anyone finds this, the clocks." The recorder clicked off by itself. When I turned it back on, another voice came through. Mine, but older, slower. "Keep telling it," it said. "That's how we breathe." I ran to the front door. The handle was hot to the touch. The lock turned, but the door opened onto another hallway. Identical. The same wallpaper, the same clock on the table, the same note that read, "If you cannot keep time, time will keep you." I slammed it shut, opened it again. This time, the door revealed the inn's dining room, Mrs. Alden polishing glasses. "Mrs. Alden!" I shouted. She didn't look up. Behind her, every bottle on the shelf reflected a small brass face,
a clock's face. All the hands pointed to 12. I backed away. The door closed itself. I found a staircase I hadn't seen before, narrow, twisting upward. At the top, a room lined entirely with mirrors waited. Each one showed a different version of me, younger, older, asleep, dying, laughing, terrified. Some mirrors ticked faintly, others breathed fog. In the center stood another of Elias Ward's clocks, a smaller twin of the glass one below. The second hand was missing. The minute hand pointed straight up. Elias appeared again in the reflection, calm, almost proud. "You hear it now, don't you?" "The ticking?" "No," he said. "The space between. That's where we live." "I'm leaving," I said. He smiled. "Everyone says that. Then the next keeper comes. What happens if I don't?" He stepped closer. The glass rippled between us. "You'll finish the hour. One of us always does." I reached for my pocket. The brass watch I'd found upstairs pulsed like a small heart. When I opened it, both hands were at 12. The second hand trembled, then moved backwards.
The house groaned. The mirrors blurred and cleared again. Now, every reflection wore Elias's face. I shouted, "Stop!" and the reflections obeyed. But they didn't vanish. They turned their heads together, slowly toward me. The clock struck once. The reflections blinked. It struck twice. They smiled. By the sixth chime, the smiles were identical. I threw the watch. It hit a mirror and shattered. The room went dark. In the blackness, dozens of pendulums swung. Each one brushed my shoulder as it passed, soft as hair. Then, silence again. When I woke, I was sitting in Elias Ward's chair in the study. The house had gone quiet, but the quiet felt busy, like thoughts being written somewhere else. The tall case clock read 11:57. Elias stood by the window, a silhouette against the pale morning. The edges of him flickered, as if even light had learned to tick. "It's almost done," he said. "Finish the story, and you can leave." "What happens if I don't?" He turned his head. The movement made no sound. "Then you'll keep it for me." I raised my recorder, and if I do tell it? He smiled again, a small wound opening. "Then someone will hear. That's how we stay." The minute hand on the clock jumped forward once, twice. 11:59. He lifted his hand. On his palm rested the unmarked watch. He said, "Take it." I shook my head. "It's already yours." He pressed it to my chest. The heat of it sank through my ribs. I felt the tick start again inside me. Elias faded like smoke, drawing itself upward. Before he disappeared completely, he whispered, "Tell it true." The tall clock began to strike. The first bell rang low and steady. The second climbed. By the 12th, the floor quivered under my shoes. Then a 13th, softer than breath. The house exhaled. Dust fell from the beams like snow. I looked
down. The ledger lay open. My name glowed once, then the ink dissolved. In its place, a blank line waited. The pen rolled across the desk and stopped beside my hand. "Tell it true," Elias's voice echoed. I signed nothing. I stood, picked up my recorder, and walked toward the front door. It opened on daylight. The sunlight felt wrong, thin, filtered, as if it had been measured before being poured. I stepped onto the porch and let the door close behind me. The moment the latch caught, every clock inside struck once more, faint but perfect, in unison. That single note followed me down the steps and across the gravel like a breath that didn't want to end.
I made it to the gate. The road beyond shimmered. For the first time since arriving, the world outside the house looked new. New in the way something looks when it's been rearranged. I checked my watch. The face was blank. The hands were gone. Only the heartbeat remained, a tiny, steady throb beneath the brass, in time with mine. I told myself to throw it into the weeds. Instead, I slipped it into my pocket. The walk back to town took longer than it should have. Each bend in the road repeated itself. Same crooked fence, same birch stump. When I reached the bridge, I stopped. Below, the stream moved backward. The sound of a single chime drifted across the water. I turned toward the hills, expecting the manor's roofline to show. Nothing, only mist and the memory of its shape. My phone buzzed. The screen lit with a notification. Recording saved 12 p.m. But it was still morning. The timestamp had jumped ahead 2 hours. For a heartbeat, I saw something reflected on the glass. My own face, but smiling, sitting in the study behind that tall clock. I dropped the phone. It hit the road and kept vibrating. When I picked it up, the screen was dark, dead. The inn sat quiet when I reached it. Mrs. Alden was polishing glasses again, always the same one. She looked up, frowned at my face. "You saw him," she said. I didn't bother asking how she knew. "I told it," I said. "Did you tell it true?" "I think so." She nodded. "Then it will let you go for a while." I sat at the counter. Steam rose from her kettle, gray and weary. "When the fire came, what happened to the clocks?" She said, "They didn't burn. They melted time instead. People found minutes puddled in the yard. Elias stood right in the middle, still listening. Listening to what? To see if time would apologize." She poured tea into a chipped cup. It never did. That night, I couldn't sleep. I replayed the recording. Static, and underneath, faint ticking. No voice, no footsteps. Just the rhythm of something small and infinite. I turned the recorder off. The ticking continued from the drawer beside the bed. I opened it. The brass watch lay inside, the green ribbon wrapped around it like ivy reclaiming a wall. I hadn't brought it here. I should have been afraid, but I wasn't. Some stories don't want to frighten you. They want to own the part of you that listens. At exactly midnight, the watch began to vibrate. The lid sprang open. Both hands rose to 12, then shivered. 13 soft clicks followed. Too fast for seconds, too slow for reason. The light in the room dimmed. The radio beside my bed turned itself on. My own voice came through the static. Tell it again, Jacob. Tell it true. The sound of the manor's clocks followed, faint, layered, hundreds of them ticking as one. Then another voice. You're late. I reached for the plug, but the cord slid out of my grasp like wet thread. The voice continued, calm and unbothered. Every keeper thinks they can leave, but you're the first who remembers how. The ticking slowed. Each beat felt like a drop of water landing inside my chest. The air thickened. My reflection in the window smiled without me. I whispered, "What do you want?" The radio clicked. Finish the hour. I walked outside. The town slept, all its windows dark. The moon hung crooked over the hills. At the edge of the road, fog gathered. Not rolling, but waiting. The watch ticked harder in my palm, like a small animal trying to escape. The gate to Oldbridge Manor stood open again. Beyond it, the house returned, solid, perfect, pretending it had never been gone. Every window glowed faintly yellow. The front door eased open on its own, a breath of warm air escaping. I should have kept walking. Instead, I stepped through. Inside, the air was thick and sweet, heavy with dust and oil. The clocks waited, pendulums poised. Elias Ward stood at the far end of the hall, hands clasped behind his back. His face was calmer now, almost kind. "You came back," he said. "I had to." "Good. Then you understand." He gestured toward the tall case clock. Its glass was no longer cracked. Inside, the pendulum swung, one side black, one bright as new gold. The sound it made wasn't a tick. It was breathing. Elias stepped aside. "Every hour needs a keeper. Mine's done." He handed me the chain from around his neck. 3 keys, one with a green ribbon. I didn't want to touch it, but my hand rose on its own. When the chain touched my skin, the house sighed, deep, satisfied. Elias smiled, fading at the edges like smoke and wind. "Tell it true, and you'll live in the sound between the seconds." He vanished. The room brightened. Every clock struck 12 together. Then a single extra note rang out, the 13th. I woke sitting in the chair by the tall clock. Morning sunlight filled the study. The ledger lay open on the desk. A new line had been written, still drying. Ward E. Released. Jacob R. 1200. The pen rolled off the table and landed beside my foot. the house was quiet again. I stood and walked outside. No mist, no strange light, just air, cool and ordinary. At the gate, I turned back once. The manor looked old again, lifeless. The ticking was gone. I tossed the keys into the weeds. They landed with a small metallic sigh. Then I left. Weeks passed. Back in the city, I tried to forget. Every clock in my apartment kept perfect time, but sometimes, just after midnight, I'd hear one extra tick. Always one. Always soft. When I finally edited this episode, I found something strange on the audio file. Between my words, faint ticking, layered, impossible to remove. Not a loop, not a filter. Something recorded itself over my voice. I decided not to cut it out. Some stories don't like to end cleanly. So, night owls, if you ever hear an extra chime after the 12th, don't count it. Don't check the clock. Don't look for the source. Because every 13th tick is an invitation. And once you've heard it, it already knows your name. Keep your lights low. Keep your clocks honest. And if one ever stops for you, leave it that way. Good midnight. This is R.J. Jacob, signing off.